Hello, welcome to my presentation on the Morrison Formation. I just had the opportunity to visit Dinosaur National Monument, which is built on top of that, which was created on top of the Morrison Formation, and I'm here to tell you a lot about that. So the Morrison Formation was deposited towards the late Jurassic. Now this image here is a little bit earlier in the Jurassic period, but it helps me illustrate the points, the depositional environment. So along our west coast here, we have the Nevadan orogeny. We have terrains accreting going on here, a mountain building, and this creates a foreland basin next to it. Now that foreland basin ends up being filled up by the Sundance Sea as it drains into here, but as the Jurassic continues, that will migrate north and that water will be leaving. Important depositional environment, the uplift will be happening through the entire deposition of the Morrison Formation. So as that happened, the foreland basin that was created next to the Sierra Nevadas that were created from the Nevadan orogeny, that foreland basin is called the Morrison Basin. Now the Morrison Basin was built along, we have lots of sand dunes and mudstones, but as the uplift continues in the Sierra Nevadas, we have a lot of rivers coming out of there, bringing all that sediment from this fluvial plain. As the rivers are going north, they're bringing lots of sediment, and as these rivers come in, vegetation follows. Now here's the stratigraphic column for southern Utah. We have the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, and right here is the Morrison Formation. It is above the San Rafael group, and the end of that is close to the end of the Jurassic. Morrison Formation was deposited around 150 million years ago, and it has two major members. Now the two major members are, the first one is the salt wash member, lots of sandstones and mudstones. But as the rivers keep flowing north during the Jurassic, we end up having more mudstones closer to the Sundance Sea. And then the brushy basin member is where the quarry at Dinosaur National Monument is built. As these rivers came in, the vegetation and dinosaurs were staying around it. They needed some water, and the fauna at the time was growing and following the rivers as well. At the time, the grass hasn't been around yet. We have mainly gymnosperm trees, cycads, and ferns and conifers growing. The climate at the time is pretty arid, warmer as the Tethys Sea is getting bigger. Global climate is warmer. At the time, Gondwanaland is rifting a little bit, Pangaea is rifting a little bit, and we see that with the accretion on the west coast. So as these rivers were coming in, the dinosaurs were drawn to the water, and they were often buried together in large clumps, large groups. Some say this was from like mudslides or landslides bringing them all into one place, or a flood of some sort, or it was just where these creatures died and it transported them to the same place. There's lots of different theories as to why these large amounts of fossils are pushed into one place, but they eventually get pushed and deposited in the brushy basin members. Now this is a rendering at the time. You can see this mural at the Dinosaur National Monument, and we have a lot of different dinosaurs available for us. We see the Apatosaurus, now the Diplodocus, and the Allosaurus and Stegosaurus over here, and I'll be going over a few of those fossils, the main fossils found at the location. The big ones were the sauropods. The sauropods were four-legged. They had lizard hips, so they were more to the side than underneath them. And these things were huge. They were some of the largest living land animals on the earth. So as we can see here, the Diplodocus was one of the largest ones, ranging up to 34 meters. And then the Apatosaurus and Camarasaurus were a bit smaller. But the Camarasaurus was very, very tall. Now these four-legged creatures were huge, and they were eating the tops of the trees. Their teeth were they call them pencil-shaped or like rounded shapes, where they could grab onto the ferns and pull their hard leaves off of it. Now if we look up here, the Camarasaurus, this is a baby Camarasaurus preserved at the Dinosaur National Monument. And you can see wonderful preservation there. I think that is a cast, but that full one, completed one, is somewhere. At the time the quarry was built, a lot of founders sent scientists, funders, sent a lot of scientists to observe these areas, and eventually most of the quarry site was taken away to museums around the world. But what's left is a very small portion of it, but still fascinating nonetheless. Lots of tracks, around 45 sets of different tracks of animals. Sauropods, there were 3 of them. These 3 ones were mainly roaming around those areas and were all well preserved. Another one, the Stegosaurus, one of the famous dinosaurs. Most people are able to recognize the Stegosaurus. It was living there as well in the Morrison Basin. Excellent preservation there. They even had some preserved back plates from them. Now the Stegosaurus had bird-like hips. It walked more with its feet under them than on the side. These plates were, originally scientists thought they were used for defense, but as we looked into them more, scientists believe that it was used for temperature control, and the spikes on the back were used as more of a defense mechanism. So the same way that elephants have exposed areas of skin with blood vessels flowing through them, it cooled the dinosaur down or was able to absorb sun if it was too cold. That's the now common theory. But they were plant eaters, and their brain was as small as a plum, one source said. Now the Allosaurus was the king of the hill. He was the most dangerous one, the apex predator during the Jurassic times. Similar looking to a T-Rex, it is a theropod, and it came before the T-Rex in the Cretaceous. This guy was mean. He was nasty. At the museum, they have a very well preserved skull, the crown jewel of their museum, and in 2019 they had to place it on a new frame and make sure prevent it from dying, from breaking down over time. Allosaurus was an apex predator. He was feasting on all of these other dinosaurs, the sauropods and the Stegosaurus. Now, one more thing about the Stegosaurus, it would be classified as an armored dinosaur, so more closely related to the ankylosaurs than the other long-necked sauropods. Allosaurus was the most dangerous guy to have around. And I recommend you go on down to the Dinosaur National Monument. You have plenty of exposed bones as well as backplates and all sorts of things. The Morrison Formation is interesting, and being around during that time would be interesting to see all the different life around there. Thank you for coming to my presentation, and hope you learned a little bit about the Morrison Formation.